Show number 569. First, let me start today's show and congratulating yet another milestone for someone else, a dear friend of mine, Tim Peter, and his podcast just rolled over show 500. Excellent podcast, Thinks Out Loud with Tim Peter. Excellent author, excellent person, excellent, pretty much everything. I know a lot of ways. He's an amazing man. Uh, to me, the finest panel moderator there ever has been when it comes to presentations in hospitality. His insights are phenomenal. He gives a clear cut, concise way of looking at things where I tend to talk around. He gets to the point very hard and succinctly and gets to the core of things that people don't often see as easily. So, congratulations to Mr. Tim Peter, Thinks Out Loud show episode number 500. Um, Great to see that. It's even though I think we started in similarities, I think his shows come up when he has a particular piece he wants to bring. So there's not this like we do regular. We've been doing regular now for almost 13 years, and every week, and he sometimes has staging gaps and so forth. Especially when he has book release, he was all over the place promoting and speaking about his book. So to slow down his podcast schedule a little bit, I think for that one, but phenomenal content. We refer to him a lot on the hospitality radio station. Um, he has excellent insight into tremendous amount of stuff, and his book is um, outstanding. So, hats off to Mr. Tim Peter for his continued success with his podcast. Well, speaking of podcasts and shows, let's jump into ours a little bit. We're bouncing back a little bit, kind of retouching a point that we started in show 566, only a couple about the beginning of the month. Beginning of June, we started. I had talked about the new BI tools, and knowing that there was going to be a lot released during the recent conferences in San Antonio at High Tech and at HSMI's commercial. And congratulations to HSMI commercial. They, I understand, they had 1,000 registrants, which is incredible considering way back when I was tethered to them and working when we first came up with the e-commerce conference. Gosh, 2003, 4 or 4 5, I forget. Back in the day, and we were happy to have broken 100 people on the initial startup of it, and that was the e-commerce. It turned into digital strategy, and then that was absorbed into commercial strategy. I understand at this conference, sales was incorporated into it, to now it's completely a full spectrum commerce for hospitality. And that is exciting that we finally have an aggregate source of content for all disciplines within hospitality when it comes to marketing and the promotion of our industry from a sales and revenue management and marketing perspective in combination of all that. So congratulations to them. High Tech also had over 6,000 registrants for it. So again, massive numbers. Next year, I know it's in Orlando, and I am making all points to make sure that I get to go over and get there, along with a few other conferences between here and then as well, to get back into the conversations a little bit for one-on-one people. I've spent a lot of time just the scheduling being a little separate, where I've been overseas. Most of the conferences have happened, and I don't get the opportunity to go over and rub shoulders with some of my near and dear friends as much as I would like. And I think that's my main drive for going, is going and reconnecting with people, as I mentioned in last week's show. So this week's show, as I said, it's a reconnect to show number 566, where I talked about the new BI tools rolling out for the conference. They did, or some had rolled out to the conference. Ed with Flip to his new space-time platform was unveiled to the general public. A lot of platforms, Avian, formerly Synexus, TravelClick, whatever, name changes, but new platforms being introduced, and how they work and integrate with so many more things, that they connect to more than just doing what they originally had done, rather than just being an online booking tool. There's data resources now associated with them, capabilities of branching out in multiple channels. We have talked about the fact that we have gone from a ZMOT transaction-based funnel timing marketing, although still existent, into driving more of an intent-driven relationship. That, I think, is being vanguarded a lot by Meta's changes into how you construct advertisement with them. Also, too, with Google, their intent, they're also changing to their UCP, Universal Commercial Protocol, where they're giving gateway capabilities of booking multiplicities of things within Google without having to go to the individual transaction resources to do so. And then Google will connect with, or has already been connected to, and then transfers the necessary data to those platforms to complete the transaction. So in envisionment, you could actually go over and pick your hotel, you rent a car, maybe some sort of pre-purchase capability at a restaurant if that's so inclined, or actually event-driven things as well, all from your engagement with Google, and create all the transactions pre-processed to them. Google handles that, and you don't have to go to each of the individual and coordinate each of the transactions as we do now. Mixed feelings. We'll be talking about more in future shows about that functionality growing and where it's starting, and believe it's being piloted first internationally before it becomes domestic. Scary in some things, we lose data, but positive in other things that we get seamless connectivity for the user experience. So we'll see where that goes. We'll be talking more about that as the time goes on. So today's show, which I keep alluding to, but not clearly saying quite yet, in relationship to all these BI tools now that are being discussed, shown, and demonstrated, Cogwheel Marketing, they have theirs. That's another shout out to Stephanie Smith, also a previous host on our show from years back. Her and her team have developed a very useful BI tool, more helpful for brand. Well, I wouldn't say more helpful, but helpful for brand ownership hotels to aggregate all of the data from disparate platforms like Facebook, Google, and so forth. And with that comes the question, or the statement for today's show: novel numbers or actionable insights, the new wave of BI tools. So I have had the privilege of being able to see firsthand and under the hood of a lot of these tools that were publicly released and or reaffirmationally updated at High Tech and at HSMES Commercial Conference, to understand what they display and show and so forth. Now, we have had, as we did on Show 566 and other shows earlier than that, discussed the pantheon or the spectrum of who uses data in our industry. And I generalized when I said that around 95% of all data users in our industry are looking for familiar benchmark data that they have been brought up on and understand: the funnel data, total audience, engaged audience, converting audience, that staged process, the larger amount of numbers migrate down to a smaller amount of numbers, migrated down to the actual value numbers. And most of our marketing is based on ZMOT, zero moment of transaction or truth, derivative of what Google has said years ago, which is transaction based. And we all hover around that last mile when it comes to advertisement, because the audience has been culled down to the interest specificity of what we represent as product. And so we want to step in front of them at the time that they are most interested in making a purchase decision. With that happening, it creates a better yield for what we're spending to be in that space at that time, rather than spending in the entire arc of engagement. And that has been the historical way we have marketed. When we talked about intent marketing, which I believe, let's see, I'm looking at my agendas from before, I think, show 564, where we talked about ZMOT versus intent marketing. We finally migrated over to intent marketing, and it has indeed grown, especially with generative AI. We are experiencing the fact that we have to engage guests at other relevant time periods within the spectrum of their desire to look at and possibly purchase our product. That intent process. A lot of that's being generated by generative AI's discoverability and answerability to users being able to find and use the data that they do find to make actionable conversions. So BI tools have grown into the need to explain all of this. Now, to recap some of our discussions as to business intelligence tools, you have to know that there is a process or tiered level relationship with data, whether it be dashboards, whether it be reports, whether it be dynamic engagement, what have you. It goes through a process. The first level of process is the aggregation of data. And that goes into a platform of reporting. That is the most common and oldest source of data relevancy that we have in our industry, in lots of industry, but in our industry, of course, in particular, because that's what we talk about, where data was aggregated for us to view. And we are very familiar with the old spreadsheets, the old static reports. As a matter of fact, we've talked at great lengths on many shows about dead reports that were done, legacy reports that were done for a reason, but that reason either got lost or the person that wanted it got lost, and they were still being done because they'd always been done, and that so few people actually used it or understood how to use it, or there was always a complexity to it. So reporting has been around. The key question it answers is what happened? Here's the data. This is our traffic. This is our people that engaged with that traffic. That is, these are the people that converted on that traffic. Here's the sources of the traffic. Here's what the performance of those each channel sources are. This is how they combine together for our total revenue for what we are reporting on. Those are usually and have historically and still continually get presented into a format very akin to the Excels of the formats of the world, or Google Sheets, depending on which way you've gone. Very rigid columns and cells, and numbers and showing. And there have been graphics that put to it to try to help interpret the numbers in a visual way. Spaghetti, which is little lines that are going to show changes. Pie charts, which are showing proportionate relationships. Bar graphs are showing contrast. And then you colorize it or something to draw attention to it and so forth. We've also colorized certain key numbers within those reports to either indicate that it's a good thing or a bad thing. Usually, going historically, green is good, red is bad. We know as things have advanced in data, we know that sometimes growth or decline can be a relative thing depending upon what you're measuring. So all things as you keep adding more and more data. I'm not saying anything new. I'm actually repeating a lot of what we talked about in show 566. What I would like to clear up about this is I ask when I work with my clients, and I ask people that work in this industry, when they look at numbers, when they see a chart, and they see somebody's accumulation of data, what do you see? Now, all of us at the level that you operate have been drawn into meetings where you're brought in, and then data is presented to you, a report or something in the meeting. You're scrambling to see what is it that I should know about this report. Am I in trouble? Am I in positive? Is this good? Is this bad? Is there something I need to comment on? Is there something relevant to me? We do this scramble of looking at the report. And all of us do that for all reports. And even when they're familiar to us, we look for certain places in the report. We've become familiar with them, so we know where the data is that we're most interested in, and we know where to glance and look. But it's really an awareness, okay? The knowledge of our RevPAR, the knowledge of our ADR, the knowledge of our occupancy, the knowledge of our traffic, the knowledge of our engaged traffic, the knowledge of our converting traffic, the knowledge of our channel and channels that have contributed to those numbers. But I ask everyone, what does this tell you? Now, everybody having to deal with this data quickly knows how to answer those types of questions. Well, this is showing that our channel has gone up here, or our revenue is down here, or our occupancy has changed here, or we should be looking at pace here. They know evaluatively how to look at the report. Okay, so you've just done that. Our pace is off, or our conversions are off, or our traffic is down. What's next? Okay. Those that rely on these data reports to continue forward on doing stuff have answers to that as well. Well, our traffic is down, so we need to look and look at our ads. First off, I identify the channels that the traffic is down from, because one cumulative number is representative of several separate numbers that have been aggregated. So where is the declination? Not everything went down, or maybe it did, but you have to figure out now, if this number is down, why? You have to ask the question why. And you go back to the data and you see where it went down. Well, it's paid Google ads. Okay. First question of it is why'd they go down? Did we expect this? Were we planning on it? Or is this an unforeseen or unappreciated declination? These are all questions that come up from it. And from there, you go into, is it campaign? Is it because the campaign is in its conclusion, or a campaign that should be running well isn't running well? There's a difference. And so those are the action items. There's a reaction to the data, and there's a depth to looking at that, getting an answers to wondering why that's there. But then it goes to, what does that mean? That question doesn't usually get asked, uh, unless there's a direct revenue correlation. A promotion campaign is not producing at the level it's doing, so now there's a retrack as to what revenues are expected from the promotion. It's I'm aware of it. That's what reports do. I'm aware of it. I've maybe looked deeper and understand the result, the causation of it, in the sense of why the number has changed, but it hasn't really cleared up always. Was that something we could have done sooner? Could we have understood that this declination was going to happen in productivity, that we passed the peak of the promotion's value, or that channel did not resonate, or those ads weren't as effective, um, or that campaign is not as productive? Could we have caught it earlier? Was there early indications to that? Was there other things that we should have seen sooner, rather than reacting to a number? We were understanding that there was issues already happening, and that goes into the second level of reporting, and that is predictive. Predictive level intelligence is what is likely to happen, and that goes to now variances, not resultants, but variances. Resultants is, hey, my campaign traffic is down. Mhm. Predictive is, I notice my campaign traffic is not performing at the projection I wanted at this point. The delta, the variance that I'm measuring, is showing a negative happening. Okay. If I stretch that out, it's going to arc it low from what I expected the end goal to be. Remember, KPIs and final goals. That predictive value is the next level of reporting that has been around. There has been modeling to show, like I said, deltas. Here's my current, here's my previous, whether previous period or previous year to over year, or here's my goal set with a trend line that I expect. I expect to hit this number. That's why we're running the campaign at this date. And there's my trend line. And my performance line is beginning to not match it. It's beginning to go below it. Is it temporary? Is it permanent? These are questions you ask. But it's below it. So the delta is negative. Is there something I need to look at? And so you predictively see and look at something earlier. So let's go look back at the campaign. Is there something not right with it? Because we expected it to be at this level of performance at this date to hit this goal on that date. But is it something we can correct for, or is it something we misjudged? Or is it just a temporary, this weekend was not a good weekend, it was a bad weather, people weren't looking, they weren't as interested as we thought they were, and we expect a rebound to it in a future tense. Let's identify the variance and then make the interpretation of what that variance causality might be. That's predictive. Predictive is also what I just said about trend lines and so forth. Taking what you have, historical data, current campaign that you want to do, basing on the performance of the previous campaign, and thinking that most situations and outside data sets are resourceful enough, are of equal value at the same time that the performance last year happened. You have a prediction that the campaign will perform similar to its historical version for the same period for the same reason. That's a predictive model of why you're doing the campaign, why you took it off the shelf and said, hey, this worked good last year, and these were the levels of success that it had. Let's apply them to our usage of it this year, so we have a prediction as to what we think this campaign is going to do. That creates a trend line. That trend line is then used for pace. That pace then determines deltas. That delta then determines performance acceptability or unacceptability. There are lots of times that campaigns that ran well one time for the reasons we thought it did do not resonate this year or this time, even though they're almost identical in their structure, identical in their targeting, identical in their message. It isn't as effective this year. Simple examples might be the discount you offered last year that was of that campaign that doesn't resonate this year. Maybe what you're offering this year is a negative to something like gas prices this year, so your drive market isn't as eager to make the distance for you because it's the price threshold for gas is different than it was last year, and that's diminishing the value impact of this campaign. That interpretive use of the predictive model, because predictive is saying I should be here at this point, but I'm not there, or I'm seeing variances to there. That predictive insight to the data is the nascent beginning of BI tools, because tools can begin to show you, not just the formulas with them, can begin to identify these variables. Now, I say these from a campaign perspective, but remember, you're talking very fundamental numbers that are also all usable by reporting versus predictive. Anything from occupancies, ADRs, RevPARs, channel production, group pace, market mix, guest satisfaction scores, labor costs, food and beverage revenue, web traffic. These are all things that can easily be applied to not just the reporting functions of a data set and dashboards, but also the predictive sets of what expectations are versus the actual production. Now, all of what I've said so far is not a new process. This is we're kind of going through the history of things to this, but now we're getting into the BI function, the business intelligence function, that's identifying the predictive models compared to the performance actuals. And it's beginning to say, this is what it should be doing, this is what it is doing, or this was expected, but it went way much higher. It's beginning to give you insights. It's beginning to show you where out of that old reporting chart of bars and columns and cells and rows, where to look, saying this number is good, bad, or be different. This is BI tools the way we've known it up to about 3 years ago. They reached the threshold of predictive value. They could tell you when things should be viewed. They could tell you if even the variance that's coming up is something to be worried or not be worried, which is quasi prescriptive in the sense of, hey, you know, this is something that you need to do, and we said that if the account performed at this level, high or low, then you would need to do this. So predictively, it hit it. So predictively, it's telling you should do it. It's not a true predictive model, but it is a way of cause and effect for predictive use. I'm sorry, I should use the word prescriptive at that point, because prescriptive is solution, which is what we're stepping into is the third level of BI tools. And that's the holy grail right now that BI tools are beginning to try to address with agentic values. Not just the historical reporting of here's the data, what happened, not just the predictive, this is what should happen. Now we're into this is what you do about it. Now, this goes into a confidence factor relationship with data. The old adage, garbage in, garbage out, is no truer than it is about the data that you use. And I will tie this to an old story that I said several times on this show, but I'll go back to it. When I was in college for economics, I always argued with the professor who turned into a dear friend about economics that the presumptive value of economic analysis was unrealistic. And that is, if all things remain constant, let's look at this one item, when never in reality are all other things constant. So the idea that you are able to stop time, take a slice of it, and analyze a component of it when it doesn't exist this way was always my contention. I was a challenging student. Anyways, the intent there is still relevant, though. How can we look at something happening in isolation to other things? And this goes to, how do we define what prescriptive value a AI agent can create for us, and what can it show for us? Now, when you isolate out only 1, 2, 3, 4 variables, occupancy, ADR, and um length of stay, when you do that, you get a transaction value. Um, it's easy to do cause and effect between those few variables. Higher ADR reduces occupancy. Higher occupancy can sometimes reduce ADR. Length of stay can compress ADR demand or expand occupancy. You get these relationship values. However, those values, ADR, occupancy, and length of stay, are influenced by a variety of other things that either you have included in your predictive analysis of those, or you've excluded in not calculating for it, which is detrimental. That's how revenue management used to exist, and it was always so frustrating why the divide between marketing and revenue management existed for so long. Marketing was seeing the sentiment, engagement, volume of traffic, messaging, resonance of the messaging, authenticity of the messaging, and the offers and so forth. They were seeing that, and then coming back to the revenue manager who's saying, I'm going to put up ADR because we're still booking at this ADR, so I'm going to put up another $10, round number. Why? I don't have no idea, but we're going to round it up for another $10 and try to hit that ceiling to see where it begins to diminish in demand. And marketing's going, you're already getting denials. You're already losing. The delta is already showing that we're losing conversions. You amping the ADR is going to accelerate that. It's going to burn our budget. We're spending the same, if not more, to try to maintain, and we're going to produce less or at best the same. These arguments existed because revenue management was taking a small subset of variables and creating correlations and value relationships to them. As we got access to more and more data these past couple of years, we realized that we could begin to influence the accuracy of our predictions by including things like weather, airlift, gas prices, competitive compression, demand to market. All of these have previous and current numbers to create comparisons to create variances for. And now all of a sudden we had this large scale data that we were trying to work and negotiate with. And it helped with our predictive modeling, saying, well, we could see historically that if we applied weather, our occupancies went up and down when it rained. I'm making simplistic conversation, but you understand the correlation. These abilities to begin to show influencing data sets required manual comparisons. Here's my performance data set of my ADR. Let me go find the weather history for that same time period. Let's overlay it. Let's look at temperatures or rainfall compared to occupancies or ADR. Then we get a sense of predictively saying, wow, if we know there's going to be bad weather forecasted 2 weeks out, our demand for those 2 weeks, regardless of the reason what we think is happening those 2 weeks, changes. Our cancellation rate may go up, whatever. It changes. I know I'm stating the obvious, but there's a lot of subtleties of other data sets. Then we got into an overload of too many variables, not assigning priority of relationship, creating a neutral, I can't decide anything relationship. If you throw in the kitchen sink of data, weather, gas, airlift, comp set, demand to market, current occupancies, current ADRs, historically, you start just big old magic bucket of it all. But you don't assign the impact value of all these data sets, so they're all equally influential on the numbers. No matter how strong of an algorithm you produce to figure out the correlations of these data sets to a definitive strategy, you get a lot of homogeny. Just stand still, and it's probably just as accurate as walking in that direction or walking in that direction, because there's so much data of equal value being assigned. There's no insight from any of it, because all the variables can be infinite until you take the first step. Until you take the first step, you don't know the direction you're going, literally. So you then have to decide what are the influencing variables, call out the ones that may not be. They might have a trailing edge impact on you, but they're not as high in the scale of impact as the ones you're choosing. Put that into a data set and quantify which ones have the higher influence compared to the others that you're using. ADR may not be the influencing factor you're looking for, but weather and traffic and gas might be, or whatever. And you amplify the ratio of value that the algorithm uses those sources for to give you a deterministic perspective on what should be happening or what you should do about it. You should lower rate to this market because they're more inclined to travel for that weekend for what you have going on. Those correlations then get discovered through putting just the specific data sets. And then you can create various, A/B testings of these data sets to say, I did with these data sets. Now I take the same data sets, but I'm going to change the variables of prioritization. Does it change my impact? Realistically, okay? You don't just change the weather from a 10 to a 1 and see just the variance, because there will be a variance, but is it realistic that weather has no bearing compared to it having a complete bearing? Those are the questions. Anyway, this is the beginnings of algorithms that early BI tools, and I say early being 2 to 3 years ago, began using in what was now called insights. Here's the data. Now, insightfully, it looks at and it predictively tells you, hey, this variance looks like it's running below what you expected or historically. This one looks like it's out of the blue doing better. This channel is not producing at the level that it historically has done. That predictive modeling shows that's easy enough. That's been going on for the 3+ years. But prescriptively, it says you should not spend as much money because it's more expensive this year than it was last year for what you're producing. So if it's not producing anymore, if you spend more, so don't spend more in this channel. You were paying $2 a click last year, you're paying 250 a click this year, and you're not getting anything for it. You've reached the saturation of your percentage of voice to the total audience. There's no need to spend more money. As a matter of fact, it looks like if we spend less money, you probably get the same revenue impact, lower volume, maybe lesser conversions, but the conversions will still produce better, and you didn't have to spend as much money for it. That's a predictive insight. Don't do this because of this. And it shows you this. It's still your choice to do, but predictively it started telling you. This is back then when algorithms were controlling insights. This is where the insights started telling you these kind of things. AI agents begin to get propagated. We talk about MCPs, where you have a centralized place where the data is pulled in, and then that's like the orchestration or the maestro of the orchestra to tell which data set gets used according to what the query of the outside agent is asking for. Now all of a sudden, your prescriptive modeling is not just more predictive for its prescriptive analysis, but it also begins to look for things or sees things that were not thought of before, which now creates a good bad. The bad is it sometimes will create really odd correlations that you can't do anything about. Everybody with blue shirts, there was more blue shirts that bought your hotel rooms these 2 days. Does that mean I target people that wear blue shirts, or that I just recognize them when they come in, and more blue shirts will come in because they get the recognition? I make a silly example, but sometimes it pulls in some odd correlations. It can only pull on these odd correlations, pull in any correlations, if you give it access to data. It has to know a place to go find the weather, both current and historical. It has to go and find a place where it can find the traffic. It has a place to go over and find the airlift. Now, I will say, in reference to going back to the conferences and having BI tools rolled out, that you have Flip2 has their new space-time, and it's pulling in a lot of outside data, like what we just discussed, to create these kind of insights. Cogwheel Marketing, for their BI tool, what they're doing is more of a aggregation of data that didn't get aggregated before. And I would say to go speak to Stephanie at Cogwheel directly about what they offer and so forth, rather than my interpretation of what I've been exposed to and shown and so forth, what have you. It's a great tool because it's not been done in that sense, where I never had a place. If I wanted to know what my Facebook campaigns were doing, I was just only on Facebook to go see it, but then I have to look at this screen or slide screens to go over and see what my Google campaign performance was doing. And then I have to go over here to my brand site to see what my brand says is going on. And I say Google in the sense that if you are doing even Google for your branded hotels, to have that source of data to come over, or your TripAdvisor, or your OTA, or your OTT, having it in a central place that now the tool can make comparisons to your channels and show you how they all interrelate and how they are acting together is very powerful, because it gives you insight. It gives you the ability to view and see what you're doing everywhere you're doing it, compared to an Ed and Flip2, where you're able to get more predictive interpretations of the data in addition to the predictive. I keep saying predictive when I should be saying prescriptive of the data, when you are looking at the predictive aspects of the data it's accumulated. It gives you variable ways, very, very visual ways of doing this. And I would say I'm actively promoting both of these. So don't think that I'm not, I was like, there's no, as everybody knows about the show, there's no sponsorship or financial relationships to anything about this show. So I can just speak opinionated about what I'm speaking about. But these are good examples of the spectrum of BI tools that are out there. And when you look at the Avians and other platforms out there in the world, they're also offering their own interpretive, predictive reporting dashboards in their systems that are tapping the sources of the data that they have access to. But are they pulling in the variable data? That's to be discovered. That's the verge of business intelligence tools that we're at right now. Is we are speaking in a transitional period. These new tools are rolling out, and just like people slapping AI on every tool, some tools don't justify BI as an acronym to their tool. It's an enhanced reporting tool or dashboard in which they can visualize, and that some comparisons or indicators are built into it so that you have some things to look at or some things that it looks at to show you that you may not normally do, or it takes a long time to get it done mathematically. Those are great, useful tools, and they quasi fall under business intelligence as saying that they give you an insight to something that's more than just reported data, but they're not true agentic developed prescriptive BI tools, which is the generation we're rolling into, that says not only here's your data historically, here's what's going on with your data as to what it should be doing, has been doing, and could be doing in that sense. But here's the what do you do about the data, insight, interpretations, prescriptive evaluation is what we're migrating to, which goes back to the topic of today, which is novel numbers or actual insights, the new wave of BI tools. I feel right now, and it's not because the tools aren't migrating towards prescriptive, and it's not that they're getting not getting smarter at what data they're seeing and doing and using, that we're still living into the tethered world of providing to the most broad denominator, in the sense of you can sell to one person, you can sell to 100 people. Which would you rather do? I'd rather sell to, or 99 people. I'd rather sell to the 99 people. 95% of the people that use data use it in a particular way out of familiarity, as I said early in the show. The volume of traffic, the engagement of traffic, the conversion of traffic. And they understand conceptually the data sets and the channels and the relationships and so forth from that perspective first. So the data has to be in the context of how they understand it for it to be appreciated and used. And that's what the BI tools are at right now. They're showing related information and data, insightful as it may be, but in same similar context. That context has to change. Now, one of the earliest changes that's going on with those right now is the attribution understanding how the data can be compared. Google has three versions of it: first click, last click, and data, which is everything between the beginning and the end is given a proportional relevance as to its impact relationship. Black box stuff Google does. Or you can just equate it as being everything's given equal data if you want to marginalize it all out. There's other variations to attribution, frequency, time decay, so forth. There is a lot of variations. I know that when you present the three types of attributions that are most common, as I just mentioned, first click, last click, and data, you see the differences that each one represents. Because for those who may not be as familiar with attribution, first click is what was the first engagement the user who ended up converting with you had? Where did they start? And you give them all that value, which means that when I'm advertising, I'm going to put more money on that channel that was first click because that seems to draw a lot of attention. Last click, which has been predominantly historically what we have always dealt with, is to say, where is it they actually bought? When was that moment they hit the buy button? That's when we're going to spend more money because that's where the action happens. And that's last click attribution. Data, or time sequenced, or proportional relationship, frequency, time decay, whatever, goes under the premises of what was completely used through their entire arc. They went from this to that to this to this. I'm going to give value to each of the channels that contributed to the final conversion proportionately to their impact value. That goes to the how often did they go to that site compared to the other sites. How long did they go between the sites, decays the value of them because they waited from the last time they were on that site before they went to this. Those are mathematical calculations. So what that does from a marketing strategy is I'm going to proportionally adjust my budget to contribute to each of these channels at a level that I feel is related to their value of how a person converts and purchases my product. When you look at all three of them side by side, you see that the numbers difference, but in that process, you also see commonality. Certain channels continue to shine better than others, or proportionally contribute more than others. Certain ones have higher contribution values, but non-converting values. You see patterns in the colors. Predictively, it'll begin a tool, a business intelligence tool, will begin to point those out to you. A prescriptive tool will tell you what you should do because of that. That BI version then turns into what data am I looking at? I know a lot of these business intelligence tools show some crazy stuff, and everybody's trying to hunt down the how do I tell you what geo is doing with your traffic or where all your traffic's coming from. So going back to the source of the data is the key element of the success of the use of the data. You need to have certain, basically three levels of data that you have to have. The most robust and the most directly interpretive is your own data. Where what is my traffic? What are my sources of revenue? What are my sources of traffic? Categorically, between online, offline, um, paid advertising on Google versus OTT versus OTA versus whatever it is, travel ads. Where is my data coming from? My traffic, my conversions, my ADR, my occupancy, my length of stays, all my historical trends, my sources, my feeder markets, all of that data. That is awareness of yourself, self-awareness. This is what I know of me, what I'm charging, where I'm getting it from, what did I do to get it, all that stuff. The other source of data is what are my competitors doing? How do I see what they're doing in the sense of the same metrics? What is their traffic? What is their spend? What is their successes on channels? Where am I seeing them? So competitive awareness in data sets is equally critical. It's not as robust, but it's equally critical. You need to have a contrast. You need to have a pace you never make a comparison to. You could be successful with what you're having, get your fair market share and all this rest of it, but you may find that you're underperforming in comparison to your comp set when you think you're happy with what you got. The third aspect of data, which is as important as the first two, is the environmental or your destination, your market data. What's your demand to market? What are the influences on that demand? Where are they coming from? What are the causations? What's the intent of their travel? What are the sources of their discovery of your market? So forth and so on. The exterior world that drives your world. And that data set is also incredibly relevant to the other two. You have to balance all three sources of value of data at a proportionate level to the impact that they have for what questions you're asking. If you're looking at your own performance data, optimization, yieldability, ROAS, ROI, those things, you don't need the other people. You don't need the other two data sources. If you're looking at competing in market for the demand that exists in market, you need to have a very hypersensitive understanding of your competitive sets data. You need to understand their moves. You need to know where their ads are going, what their ads are targeting. What do you think their estimated budget spends on to know correlations of what their potential ROI or value proposition is? What moves are they making? Okay. If you're looking at drawing business to you, you need to understand market demand, where it's coming from, why it's coming from there, what to do about getting in front of the people that are the most intrigued about coming to you, what have you. Okay. The intent of it all. So each has its higher value depending upon the question you're asking. Each one has a prescriptive knowledge based on what you're wanting to know from it. Each one has a predictive understanding based on what it had done versus what it's doing now, and a reporting value of what is actually happened from the numbers that you get for what they represent. Numbers of traffic of people that came to your destination market from your CVB or TDC or Chamber of Commerce. The markets that drove to you, the markets that flew to you, the demographics of people that came to you, the events that drove them, the seasonality of their interest. All of these things are data points that need to be considered. They all have to have a place in business intelligence in an arching over way. If you're looking at a BI tool for your personal performance, ADR occupancies, length of stay, then there's a BI tool for you. There's a lot of BI tools for you, a lot of reporting and predictive tools for you, dashboards and so forth for your business that will aggregate the data from your Facebook ads, your Google ads and Bing ads and OTAs and so forth and put it together for you to be able to work with. If you're looking at your demand to market BI, your what's the world doing to come to me, or how interested in me, or how can I get them interested in me, what have you, you need a BI tool that has outside influence data about the weathers, the traffics, the demands, the feeder markets and so forth, the demographics, the behaviorals, those data sets, those BI tools, then get aggregated with your performance metrics to know how correlated are those things to the knowledge you know about yourself when it comes to business. Do those things actually impact me? I see that there's this huge demand to market, but I don't seem that I'm getting it. Question and answer. That's when you go to your third data set, which is your competitive BI tool. What are they doing? How are they doing it? Are they getting this business? Why didn't I get that business? Well, I didn't even know they had that business. Now, some of this business might be the fact that you're not a downtown hotel and they were. So, of course, they're going to get a different type of business than you are. Again, to your own self be true. Why was your building built? For what purpose is it providing? What business it was built for? So you always have to give it with a grain of salt. Don't compare yourself to people that are businesses that are unrealistically comparable. It's just because it's in your market doesn't mean it gets the same demand. But for those that you can compare yourself to, that's one thing. That's comp set stuff. If you're looking at why you're coming to your market in general, whether it's downtown or you or not, that's outside data, market demand data. What I'm saying is BI tools have yet to mature to that level where all of that can be brought together. There are tools going in that direction. I would say Flip2 is the first I can say to say that has their space time is integrating other aspects of tools, and they're getting better at identifying their internal data sets. As I get debriefed from my friends that were at the conference and they talk and share about the things they got from different vendors at High Tech, I'm looking at whether or not anybody else has picked up that mantle and is looking at the same way of doing things. There's certainly revenue management tools that are trying to address some outside data sources. There are booking tools that are trying to identify outside data sources as well. None of them are moving into the predictive world yet, as they more are in the prescriptive. They're not moving into the prescriptive world yet as much as they're maintaining a predictive level of understanding of the data. I think Flip2 is the first to start showing that they're trying to get into the prescriptive model by aggregating data and then you choosing what data influences you want and then seeing what it says about or displays to you right now. It eventually will show you more ways of understanding it of the data as it exists. All of this is exciting because all of this will help do what we do. It'll help abbreviate the research necessary to make good, actionable decisions. I would say in all earnestness that right now I am not inclined in any which way to allow the autonomy of AI to do all of this and act on what prescriptive analysis it has, because I am a huge believer that regardless of how much data you give it, the human factor of interpretation is not there to marginalize the impact of some data sets that should not be as well strongly influenced in the discovery process. Just because you put the weather in doesn't mean it should be influenced as hard. There should be criteria value relationships of if the weather didn't vary much out of the historical norm, then its factor of influence should be negated. I say these things because I work on these things. I work on the math correlations of these things to have deterministic value, prioritization of data sets, use of the data sets, the criteria of uses of the data sets, and knowing when they should and could be not used. I mean, it sounds silly, but from the human perspective, knowing that it hasn't rained the past week and it's been beautiful and sunny and temperate weather, I don't have to look at data sets that have weather influence on it to know that it most likely has a positive impact, unlikely will have a negative impact, and shouldn't be a factor in consideration outside of any demand that that I have is good because it's not being influenced by weather. In contrast, if I know I'm the only place in the country that's having good weather and everybody else is having crap weather, I also know that it has an influence on my market, because that means that people might be likely to say, why are they going? I want to go there. I mean, it's raining where I was going to go. I'm going to go to the place that isn't raining. Then it has a positive. That's the human component of it that, from an AI perspective, has yet to be defined in a way that it could be used or accurately in that kind of modeling. So that's digression down a rabbit hole of technology that we were having with the Hospitality Marketing Club. All right. I'm happy with the discussion I've had about this. I feel that it's one that will be ongoing. I think it's one that we will continue to evolve as we get better and better tools, or better use of tools, as we get better in defining what is a BI tool and what's really just a good predictive reporting tool. I think we're going to begin to create delineation between these types of perspectives as to what's offered right now. I think, as I said before, BI is slapped onto it much like AI slapped onto it. It's a term that people can understand, or at least makes them curious to know what it does in correlation to that, when really it was an effective reporting and predictive tool without it going into some slapped on AI or BI perspective. And no derogatory to anybody that's doing that thing. People have to understand what their dashboard or their reporting processes do, and it's necessary that it draws attention to them, and that's the way to do it. Yeah, I think we're good with that. For everyone that has watched us live on our simulcast on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. Thank you so much, Twitch, for everyone that watches us on Twitch. Um, if you're watching on our TV channel, the Hospitality Channel, on all smart TVs, Roku, Google, Amazon, everything. Catch us there, Hospital for the Hospitality Channel and TV. The show's always on the free side of it. We are looking to put on more content behind the paid gateway, and we are looking to showcase a lot of vendors that were at High Tech that had their A game on videos and so forth, to aggregate them and put them in a product showcase on the TV channel, so that they can go back and have some sort of way of showing off some of their stuff to people that maybe they didn't have enough time to talk to, or people didn't get to stop by their booth, or they stopped by the booth but they didn't get a chance to look at the whole spectrum of their services, whatever. We're looking to gather a lot of that data as well for the TV channel. And of course, you can always watch us on our app of the TV channel, the Hospitality Channel, Apple iOS or Google Play. Just look for Hospitality Channel. It's an app. Put it in. Shows there. TV channels there. Good stuff. We also have Hospitality Radio, hospitalityradio.com. Unlike our TV channel that broadcasts out to 209 countries, and we translate the show in 11 languages for that. We also have the Hospitality Radio Station, which broadcasts digitally globally to 39 countries. And it's a linear program show. It goes everywhere from sales to operations, accounting, HR, marketing, all of it. So lots of great content from a variety of excellent people through that entire process. And of course, if you want to give me any feedback, any comments, content, suggestions, insights, you can reach me at lauren@hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. Or if you want to leave an audio message, go to hdm.news/talkback. I usually present a question of the week, get some interesting comments about it, and also anybody that wants to leave a audio comment or content to me, they leave it there. And of course, if you're a hospitality marketing professional and wish to join a peer level group of people that are doing the same thing, you can reach out to hospitalitymarketing.club and we'll go from there. Anyways, it's been a great day. It's been a hot day around the world, especially yesterday. Weather, here we are talking about weather, and here weather has an effect. I think we've covered all that I wanted to cover today. So with that, my name is Lauren Gray. I thank you for the privilege of your time and looking forward to talking to you next week.